All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm happy to welcome back friend of the pod, Chris Cillizza, and you can read him at the So What Substack. Chris Cillizza, great to see you.
Hello, hello, hello. Always happy to be on.
Loving what you do. I'm a avid reader and viewer.
Thank you.
And so I want to ask you just about some of the things you've been talking about.
Sure.
Let's start with JD Vance. You say he is the front runner for the Republican nomination. I think that's probably right. But talk about some of the reasons you think he's strong and also the unique obstacles he's facing.
Yeah, I mean, reason number 1, 2, and 3 that he's strong is he's the current vice president of the United States as picked by Donald Trump. Reasons number 1, 2, and 3 of why that may be a harder path than he thinks is Donald Trump, right? I mean, I just feel like it always, right. All roads lead back to Donald Trump's, I mean, at best, his mercurial nature, right? Like, I think JD has, and the Times, New York Times recently wrote about this, Politico recently wrote about this, like, he's decided, and I think smartly, that, like, look, whatever his past positions were on the Epstein files, on sort of, he wouldn't call it isolationism, but the use of U.S. military force abroad, that he's going to subsume those positions within Trump's views. And I would say to people who are critical of that, like, welcome to what every vice president ever does.
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's not
George
unique.
Bush had to do the same thing with Ronald Reagan.
Totally.
Some big issues, including, I think, abortion, actually.
I mean, Biden did it for Obama. Harris did it for Biden. I mean, it's the nature of it. It's why the job in a lot of ways sucks, because it's like, yeah, all those things that you think, none of those things matter anymore. But I think Vance's sort of path is like even more challenging in that, I think that most presidents who are in their second term understand, George W. Bush being the exception because Cheney obviously wasn't interested in running, but understand that, like, the VP is going to start to move out at some point on their own and, carve out a bit of his or her own legacy. Trump may understand that intellectually, but, like, I don't know how that plays, like, in his actual lived experience, right? Like, because he is a guy who we know gets super pissed off when he views anyone taking shine that is rightly his. I mean, he always, I think he had a specific and unique amount of vitriol for Ron DeSantis, because in Trump's mind, he made Ron DeSantis, right? Like, Ron DeSantis would never even come close to being governor of Florida if not for Donald Trump's endorsement. And so the idea that Ron DeSantis would then use that perch to run against Donald Trump was, in Donald Trump's mind, disloyal, although loyalty is a one-way street for Donald Trump. So I just think that's a hard road for Vance to walk. And as you point out, Mike Pence spent 364 days of the second term of Trump's first term, rather, being incredibly loyal to Trump. And then one day, January 6th, saying, like, okay, I can't just, like, throw the election back to the states because you want me to. And that was it for Mike Pence. So, the track record of Donald Trump's VPs is not amazing. It's 0 for 1. I just think Vance is probably the front runner, but I think because Trump is Trump, there are a lot of ways that could go bad.
Yeah. It reminds me, this might be a weird analogy, but I always think of, like, some rich guy. You meet this rich guy and you work for him, and you have the idea that if you're loyal and you work for him, someday he's going to retire and you're going to inherit the business.
Totally.
Or you get something, and then he gives it to his deadbeat son instead at the end, right?
Or, like, you're an assistant coach in a college basketball program for 15 years. And then at the last second, and you assume that when the coach retires, you'll be the coach. At the last second, one season before he's set to retire, he brings his son on. Yes. And you're like, wait, what? And,
yeah.
And by the way,
other
the son
Shanahan.
Right, exactly. And the son analogy here, I mean, I've talked about this, and is appropriate, because people roll their eyes, but, like, to the extent Donald Trump's loyal to anyone and cares about anyone's feelings other than his own, and I think that can be somewhat debatable, it's his blood relatives. JD Vance is not a blood relative. Donald Trump Jr. is his eldest son, who has shown both an ability on the campaign trail and an interest. He wants to run for something. He's made that very clear. So if, in 2026, mid 2026, Don Jr. and his dad have a heart to heart, and Don Jr. says, I think I'm the best steward of Trumpism going forward. What the hell is JD Vance going to do about that?
If you can't have a dictatorship, have a dynasty, and it could happen.
And he's clearly interested in a dynasty, by the way. I mean, he didn't get one with Laura Trump, his daughter-in-law, deciding not to run for North Carolina. But he's clearly interested in ways to extend, whether it's staying in office or trying to stay in office or just populating sort of the ranks of the Republican Party with Trump acolytes. He's clearly interested in building a dynasty. I will note again, that's not dissimilar to most politicians. Obama wasn't super interested in building a dynasty. He was kind of sui generis, like, this is about me. But most politicians are like, I always think of it like a football coach. It's like all these Belichick, proteges, Vrabel is now back in New England. Right. Yeah. I think there's a desire to do that. And I think look, Steve Belichick is done pretty well being Bill Belichick's. I think he's the defensive coordinator at North Carolina. And I assume he'll become the head coach at North Carolina when Bill Belichick retires. Like, this is how the world works, not just politics. And that's why if I'm JD Vance, I'm slightly nervous about Don Jr. And I'll go back to that Super Bowl interview that Trump Sr. gave with Brett Baer, in which Brett Baer was like, this is January, is JD Vance the heir to the presidency or your 2028 successor? And Trump says, no, although I like him a lot, or something like that. I mean, that's not exactly like confidence inspiring if I'm JD Vance.
My list is, I think JD Vance, Tucker Carlson, and Don Jr. are the three. Those your top three? Okay.
Yes. And that's, what? I was putting a list together probably 6 weeks ago, and I talked with our friend Jonathan V. Last about it privately.
Yes.
Publicly. And he was
I love you. By the way, doesn't say I love your public conversation.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yes. We're trying to do it more often. I do really like him. So I was talking about a guy.
Talk about a guy who's been, it's so funny if you study people who have kind of breakout moments. A lot of times it's a tragedy, and like losing the Weekly Standard must have been traumatic for a lot of people, but it really made him into this.
There is opportunity. I mean, that's what I tell people all the time. Look, tomorrow, I think, tomorrow, or July 31st is the last day that you can, if you work at the Washington Post, you can accept their buyout offer. So we've seen, I worked there for 12 years. We've seen a ton of people. Glenn Kessler, the fact checker, took it. Several people who I know most people don't know, but a guy named Mike Semmel, Monica Norton, their editors, longtime editors, they took it. I just before we came on heard that Sally Jenkins took it.
Oh wow!
And I know, and I think that it's like,
is that why you were talking to Tony Kornheiser?
Yes, exactly. That's why I was talking to Tony. I was like, did you see that Sally took the buyout? So I think there's opportunity that exists beyond a lot of these places. I think I think you and I are right on the cusp of being old enough to think of ourselves, to start our careers of having thought of ourselves as company men. And I think we're now in a place where you realize, like, wait, like there is things beyond working at CNN or the Washington Post or the Weekly Standard or the New Republic or whatever. Anyway, so I was talking to JVL and I was telling him, like, so my list is, at that point, it was JD, Don Jr., Rubio, Cruz, probably in that order. And I can't remember who else. And I didn't have Tucker on the list. And he was like, dude, he basically was like, I like you. I think you're smart. But there's no chance Marco Rubio is being the nominee in 2028. Like, and he certainly has less of a chance than Tucker Carlson does. And, I thought to myself, like, I think he's right. Like, I think I still was operating. This was not that long ago. I still was operating under kind of the old rules of like how this all works. Well, Rubio's the Secretary of State. He's run for president before. He can raise the money. And it's like, well, yeah, but like Donald Trump is in his second term as president. Do we really think the Republican Party is going to, or politics in general, but the
Yeah.
Republican Party is going to go back to like, let's nominate someone who's got the resume for it. No, I think it's much more likely that we move more in the kind of entertainer
No, I
direction
agree
in
with
both parties, by the way, in both parties, but
totally.
definitely in the
And I want to
Republican
get to
Party.
the Dems, and I agree with the new Chris Cillizza, but I will give props to the old Chris Cillizza, which is to say, it's not like Rubio is still the man exactly he was a decade ago either.
He is not.
I
He
think
has
he's
transformed
very
himself.
shrewdly rebranded, but I don't think it'll be quite enough.
I just think so is Ted Cruz, right? But I think ultimately it's kind of like, well, do you want like real Coke, Don Jr.? I mean, I think that may be
Right.
JD's problem too. Like, do you want
Right.
real Coke or do you want a guy who is like a convert, right? Do you want new Coke who like, yeah, JD, there's all these comments JD
Yeah.
made about Trump in the same way that there's all these comments Cruz made about Trump, including his pointed refusal to endorse him at the 2016 Republican National Convention. There's all these things, Rubio with the small hands. It's like, why would I go for that when I could go for the guy's eldest son, who is even more Trumpy than the original recipe? You know what I mean? Like, and that's what and look, maybe Don Jr. runs for the governor of Wyoming or something. And I think anything's possible. But I continue to think that if he wants it, he will have it.
Yep. I think you're right. I think you're totally right. Okay.
And Tucker is, and just to go on Tucker, I mean, look, Jonathan and I talked about
Jonathan,
Tucker.
by the way, was very close friends with Tucker. He really
totally.
I listen to a lot of Bulwark, and I've never heard him. I think because he keeps certain things personal, and I totally respect that. But he doesn't really. I would love to get him on sodium pentothal because I think
they swam in the same kind of conservative waters in the early 2000s. I mean, look, I always remind people, how when I first heard of Tucker, he was this hot new bow tie wearing journalist writing for Talk Magazine.
Yeah,
by Tina Brown. He's a great writer, great profile writer. And he was a conservative, yes, but he's nothing like he is now. I just think he is a shapeshifter and he is a very good communicator. And being a shapeshifter and a very good communicator in this modern political environment is a lot of the game.
It will get you far. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Dems. Am I correct in saying that you've got AOC?
I do.
At the top of your ranking.
I do.
I think I'll give you my take, and I think we're probably on the same page. Brett Baer used to do this thing. I don't know if he still does because I don't watch it anymore, but he used to do this thing on Special Report where you would get these poker chips, and you could put down. So if I were betting $100 on the Dems, I think I would put down like $25 on AOC, $25 on Mark Cuban, and then $50 on the field if I were betting today.
I think that's very smart.
Is that where are you on that?
Yeah, see, I like that way of doing it. The hard thing is it's hard to be like, I bet 3 credits on AOC in like writing. It's easier to do it in this format. Like in writing, it's like, okay, here's 1 to 10. And it's like, well, 1 means he definitely thinks she's going to win. It's like, no, it means like if I have to do, when you go to my eyesight is terrible and always has been, you go to the eye doctor and they're like, and now A or B? And you're like, A. And they're like, and now B or C? And I'm like, B. It's like that. Like you're comparing each of them against each other.
It's like, I'm not sure they
and
even
it's like very close. Totally. I'm always like, they look like the same to me.
Is he just trolling me?
Exactly. And I think some of this is like that. I think any time, and look, I do ranking. You want to know why I do rankings? Because people love rankings and they love to argue with a list.
Yes.
But the truth is like, the idea I've seen like Cillizza declares AOC frontrunner. It's like, no, I said like, if I had to bet on one person and one person only today, she is the person I would bet on. But I bet $100. I wouldn't bet $1,000 or whatever, right? It's gradation. So anyway, the thing with her, I would, if I love the Cuban, her versus rest of the field. Now, I don't know that Cuban's going to run, although I think he'd be crazy not to think about it because he's really well positioned. Outsider, celebrity, rich, has an issue. I mean, even more than Donald Trump had any issue, has an issue in that he's created this, low-cost prescription drugs company. he has an issue that people care about.
He's also got a masculinity that I think is needed today, and that to me is the biggest. I mean, I hate to say it. It obviously is a sexist thing to say, but I think that may be the biggest concern I would have as a Democrat about AOC, even more than her ideological standpoint, would be like the Democrats have lost. They've run 2 women who've lost.
Oh yeah,
both of them.
Yep.
And
Democrats are aware of that.
machismo happening right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, I've talked to a lot of liberals who I did not think would think this way, and they're like, we can't nominate another woman. Because I used to talk more about Gretchen Whitmer. She's had kind of a bad 2025, but
big time.
I used to, and they'd be like, we just can't pick another woman. And I was like, you're a liberal. Like, you're not supposed to see the world in these terms. And I do think that's a real thing. And I think it will be an issue for AOC too. Look, let me make the quick AOC case, with the understanding that the case against her can be made pretty easily too. The case for her goes something like this. Every election, particularly a primary election, is a reaction to the last one. Okay, so the last one was white old guy, too old to win, too enfeebled to win. Basically, I know Harris replaced Biden at the end, but the bulk of it was we are nominating this old white guy who served in office for a zillion years. Okay, so just in terms of a visual contrast, you have about 30, I think she's 35, I think. 5 or 36 at this point.
Barely legal.
Barely legal to run for office. To run for president.
Yeah.
35, mid-30s Latina woman. Okay, so just on that contrast alone, I think that is helpful. Second, so much of a primary is not really issues-based. I mean, like, you know, I always say to people, like, primaries nowadays especially, most of the Democrats are pretty liberal and most of the Republicans are pretty Trumpy. There's no, like, I mean, you can't even use this example anymore, really, but like, I remember in 2008, it was like, there's the conservatives and the Republican Party, and then there's McCain, who's kind of in his own thing, and then there's the liberal/moderates, Rudy Giuliani voters, right? Yeah. There's none of those.
You even had like Arlen Specter probably
totally
hanging around.
And those lanes like don't really exist anymore. So it's like whoever runs for the Democratic nomination, like, is Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, more moderate on policy than AOC? Yes. Is Andy Beshear like a conservative Republican? No, I mean, not even close. I mean, most of these people are going to be liberals. So I think that her leftiness, and she's clearly on the far end of that spectrum, I think it matters less because these votes don't come down to policy because they're very similar on policy. And then 2 last things, energy/buzz and fundraising. So I don't know. There are 2 people in the who are currently in Democratic officials currently in elected office who, if I said tomorrow we're going to do a event in Tallahassee, Florida, just pick some random place. I need you to guarantee me I have bet my life on there being 10,000 people there. I think there are 2 people who I would feel comfortable betting my life that they could get 10,000 people there in the next 24 hours or 5,000, whatever. A significant chunk. She is one, and Bernie Sanders is the other. And Bernie Sanders is an 84-year-old man who's run for president twice. I don't think he's running for president again. So, like, that's the buzz thing. I do think that matters. I'm not saying crowd size matters, but, like, interest in her candidacy, excitement about her candidacy matters. You get a lot more people, and I'm sure you get this too, Matt. Very few people are like, hey, what's the deal with Andy Beshear, huh? Most people are like, is AOC going to run? Now, I could argue Beshear's probably their best nominee, but regardless, that's 1. 2, she raised between January 1 and June 30th, $15.5 million for a safe House district as a, let's be honest, rank and file member of the minority party in the House. Hakeem Jeffries, who is the House Minority Leader, raised $6 million. Mike Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House, raised $8.5 million. Like, and her average contribution, this is probably the most, should have led with this, her average contribution is $17. What does that tell you? The same thing that the 10,000 people showing up in a crowd shows you. There's energy behind her.
The old Matt Lewis would have said, the Beshear is the obvious smart bet. If you pick AOC, you're going to lose people kind of like never Trumpers, you know, people who are suburbanites, McCain, maybe they voted for Obama, but they also
Romney
voted,
2012 for sure,
that kind of
probably. Yeah.
voter, they're going to be afraid of AOC and they're going to vote for JD Vance, who doesn't seem as menacing as Trump, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not so sure. Playing it safe for Democrats hasn't actually worked. Maybe AOC does turn off some suburbanites, but she excites more people who didn't even vote in the past and young people.
Let me ask you this. I've thought a lot about this, and I thought I knew the answer for the last decade, and I'm not sure I know the answer anymore. Are you certain that if Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary in 2016, that he would lose to Donald Trump?
No.
In that general election.
Mm-mm.
I used to say, of course he would. I'm not certain that's the case.
Or if Bernie had beat Biden in 2020.
Totally. Same thing. Like, could Bernie not have been elected president? I think he probably could have.
I'm much more inclined to say he had a chance today than I was at the time.
Me
too.
At the
time I would have written him off, but we wrote off Trump too.
But that's the point. I always say this when people are like, fill in the blank, Don Jr. could never be president. AOC could never be president. Dude, we are in the second term of Donald Trump. Are you telling me that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has a less credible background and case to be president of the United States than Donald Trump did? There's no way in hell.
Yeah.
I mean, like, at least she's been in elected office. Like, or Cuban, or I think we still, it's like we haven't learned our lesson when we have our lessons sitting in the White House every day.
I think you and I have learned our lesson. And to be fair, I'll speak for myself. I don't think I ever actually wrote off Trump, but I certainly would not have bet on him. I certainly, but I always thought he had a chance because, once it's sort of like, let's go back to the sports analogy, man. You go to any Super Bowl, it's one game, and they'll have like 5 experts, Terry Bradshaw, you go down the list.
Howie Long, totally.
Yeah, they go down and they're quite often 5 out of 6 of them are wrong about picking who wins the game. And so, it does take a certain humility, but to your point, I am much more likely to say in hindsight that Bernie, because look, he doesn't feel like a politician, even though he is. He connects with Joe Sixpack, even though he's a millionaire. And could he have done better in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan? Hell yeah, absolutely.
I mean, given the state of the country in terms of how pretty evenly we are split, if you think someone could plausibly be a party nominee, then they absolutely can be elected president. I mean, because it's basically a coin flip. I mean, it's like what I never realized with Trump in 2016 that I should have is like, that Donald Trump has because it's so obvious, Donald Trump has a better chance than every single person in the country other than one person to be elected president of the United States, right? He's running against Hillary Clinton. So everyone else isn't the Republican nominee for president, and he is. So this idea that like, he could never win, of course he can win. I mean, and the other thing too is we're bad at probabilities. I always think this, like in like the Nate Silverization of the world, I think has taught us the wrong lesson. Nate would always say, and if he was on this, I think he would say the same thing. Like when somebody sees there's an 85% probability that the Yankees are going to beat the White Sox. ESPN does this all the time now, like win probability. Okay. I think the assumption there is like, oh, well, the Yankees are going to win.
You can bank on it, yeah.
Now, here's the thing. What that means is if they play the game 100 times, yes, the Yankees win 85 times, but the White Sox win 15 times. And what I always say to people is, let's say I say, hey, Matt, walk across the Beltway at 4:45. There's a 10% chance you'll be hit and killed.
Yes.
Now, that means there's a 90% chance you won't be hit and killed. Is there any way in hell you are doing that? It's like getting on a plane. There's a 90% chance this plane's going to land safely. You'd be like, wait, that means there's a 10% chance. So in 1 out of 10 times this plane doesn't land safely, like there's no way in hell I'm getting on that. But we don't think of it in those terms, right? And I think I'd look at these prediction things and it would be like Hillary 64% chance of winning, Trump 36%. I'd be like, oh, he could never. Well, 1 in 3 times he wins, even under that.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're obviously right. My only pushback to like the Nates of the world would be, he knows that people are going to interpret this headline a certain way, and he gets and he got clicks from it.
Yes, that's true.
I think yes, but then it was sort of like when Jon Stewart could like play in politics, and then as soon as somebody pushed back, he'd be like, "Hey, what are you talking about, man? I'm just a comedian. I'm on TV before puppets, you know." And it's like, well, which is it, you know? So I feel like
here's your cake, and also you must eat it too. Yes,
exactly.
But I think a lot of people in politics, I see some of these lists and I'm like, there's these 28 lists. And I'm like, there's just no way in hell that some of these people, unless, in the next 2 years, there's a radical change in what the public is looking for out of their elected officials and presidents. And I don't anticipate that. If I had to guess between things will get more Trumpy just in terms of celebrity and entertainer and reality TV, or they'll get less Trumpy, I think I would lean. I mean, that's a black and white choice. It could be somewhere in the middle, but I think I would lean on the more Trumpy rather than less Trumpy.
Not even Trumpy, more MAGA-y, which is like dark, even darker. Like Trump has a certain humor sometimes to him.
Yes.
Jackie Mason,
absolutely. I think that's part of his appeal. Yes.
More conspiratorial, more dark. Actually.
Did you see, speaking of conspiratorial, I'm obsessed with this chart. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. No, we're not going to do that. Hold on. Okay. Let me find this chart. This is the Washington Post did a poll on Epstein. And like who's following it. And I thought, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, but buried way down in there. And credit, by the way, to my friend Brooke Brower, who used to be the executive producer of ABC's This Week. He pointed this out to me. Okay, so the Post asked people, do you believe the medical examiner's ruling that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide in jail, or do you believe he was murdered? Okay. 44% was murdered. 42% unsure. 15, that's 15% of people believe he died by suicide, which is what the medical examiner has said about how he died.
You know what's crazy?
We live in a nation of conspiracy. I know.
I'm even not
Me
sure.
neither. But my point is like we do now live in this nation of conspiracy and of like, well, what are they not telling you? And I just think that's going to grow rather than shrink.
Absolutely. And I think there could be like, in the not sure category, could be like, well, he did commit suicide, but they told him, hey, we're turning off the cameras. We're looking the other way. We're not going to put another inmate in there with you. You do what you need to do. So anyway,
I mean, that finding is remarkable. 15% of the public believes the thing that the medical examiner has said happened to Jeffrey Epstein, and anyone who has looked at the files has concluded happened. Now, that doesn't mean it happened. It doesn't mean cover-ups don't happen. But the other one that I'm always fascinated by, I went to the Sixth Floor Museum in Dallas like 6 months ago, and it is remarkable if you look at like everyone who has done like a bit Warren Commission, everyone who's done a big deep dive into this, with the exception of Oliver Stone, including Stephen King, who wrote this amazing book. It's fiction, but loose fiction. And he did a huge deep dive into JFK, have concluded that Oswald did act alone and assassinated Kennedy. But man, if you look at the data, like within a year of that assassination, 60+% of the public believes that Oswald did not act alone. And that number has not moved in decades. It's like facts don't change it.
Hey, since you mentioned Stephen King, I've been wondering, I heard you and JVL talking about how much you came around to like Stephen King later in life. And of course, his book on writing is fabulous. And I am not a horror fan per se. Like,
me neither.
I like so like movies like I like Get Out, or like I like thrillers, but I don't like horror per se. But
yes, you're not like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan.
Exactly.
Right.
But if I was gonna read like one Stephen King book, That is in the horror genre. What would you recommend for a wimp like me?
So I'm a wimp like you too, and I wrote about this on my Substack about how my distaste for Stephen King was born of the fact that my dad loved him, and as a teenager, you don't like anything your parents like is
I have a
inherently
teen. I have a
uncool,
teen right now.
right?
So yeah.
So I think some of it was that, but also it was kind of like my snobbery. Like, well, I only read Thomas Pynchon. I only read literary fiction. And then also, as I got older, like, I don't really love like horror books. I don't even like horror movies. Like Get Out is probably too scary for me, to be totally candid. But I realized, so much of what King is doing, he's so much better than this is a JVL point. He's so much better than he needs to be, because he could totally mail it in at this point, and every book you read be a bestseller because he's Stephen King. But like, the one I really liked recently is called Revival. It did not get, I actually have been reading, I've been on a mission not to read like The Stand and Cujo, Salem's Lot, but I've kind of been on a mission to read some of the more recent, he's written so many books, but some of the more recent 90s till today. And Revival, which actually got recommended to me by a guy who works for Tom Emmer, the whip, House Majority Whip. It's a great one. And there's not even really, there's supernatural-ish stuff, but it's not like, King never really did this, but there's not like, and then he chopped his leg off kind of stuff in there. I loved it.
Really?
I mean, It has like Carnival Barker. There's like Carnival Carney stuff in there, and this weird like musician subplot. I don't know. Out of the ones I've read recently, I really like Revival. I also read Holly, which is about Holly Gibney, who's in a lot of his things. Cynthia Erivo played her. She's a detective in a lot of his things. Some of the stuff that he does that is more thriller / mystery, I'm kind of gravitating. Mr. Mercedes, like stuff of that stuff, I think is kind of interesting too. There's just so much. I'm trying to slowly but surely work my way through it. But yes, Revival would be my number one seed. It will not take you a long time to read, and it is a wonderful book.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yes, of course.
Couple quick questions, and I will get you out of here.
Okay.
So we're talking. So it sounds like if you're betting, you're going to bet it's AOC versus JD Vance. And as someone who writes about politics, you have to be kind of licking your chops at that.
Oh, what a race that would be!
Like that would be so much more fun to cover, right, than what we've had in the last few years.
Yes, that would be a fascinating race, and I also think there's a decent-ish chance that Vance chooses Don Jr. as his VP very early on.
Right.
Like there's a deal cut there.
Yep.
And then whoever AOC would pick as her VP doesn't really matter. Like that race is. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is challenging.
You go Josh Shapiro?
Well, no, or do you go kind of off the board? Like, do you pick like a Cuban or something? Right. Or do you pick someone who no one's thinking of? I don't know. All I know is that political conventional wisdom has been wrong a lot more than it's been right over the last decade and a half. And I think we have to be mindful of that. One of the things I struggle with, and this is true with Donald Trump too, is like, I always say Donald Trump may have extended the shelf life of journalism even while destroying democracy because he is a content machine. He says and does, whether it's we need to change the name of the Washington Commanders back to the Washington Redskins, whether it's attacking Chuck Grassley, whether it's, calling Jerome Powell too late. He creates so much content and so much fodder, and no one, whether you like him or you hate him, no one can ignore him. And I think Vance, Don Jr., and AOC would be in that same realm, although I don't think anyone's in the same category as Donald Trump. And so it's like, it's hard because it would be good for business, candidly, for me, out here kind of, doing the work of like being independent. I don't know what it would say about our politics and about where we're headed. Probably not much good. So it's kind of hard because it's like, I don't really root. I always say Dan Balls once, did Dan Balls, Dan Balls or John Harris? Somebody at the Post a long time ago said, the best reporters root for interesting stories. They don't root for
Yeah.
like a Republican to win or but
Root for the
interesting
story.
stories.
Yeah.
Root for the story. And I mean, Don Jr. and AOC involved in any kind of race, much less Vance, is an incredible story,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, I'm trying to separate out the rooting for the best story versus what I actually think will happen versus what's good. I mean, my ability to judge what's good for the country is pretty limited, to be candid. I think anyone who says they know what's good for the country is maybe bullshitting you. But yeah, I mean, I think that race would be, the level of interest would be off the charts.
I feel like my career was better before Donald Trump came along, but that's probably confusing correlation with causation.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for anyone on the right, the Republican Party is, and conservatism is unrecognizable.
Yeah.
It's just not even close to the same thing. Liberalism is still in the same ballpark that it was 15, 20 years ago. I mean, I always cite Paul Ryan, guy who made it on the national ticket, guy who was the Speaker of the House, talking about low taxes. We need to address our entitlement problems. We need to address debt and deficit. I mean, he's not even a Republican. I mean, maybe he's a Republican. I don't know what his party registration is, but like, he doesn't fit into any corner of the Republican Party now.
Yeah.
And that's not a guy from 40 years ago. That's a guy from 10 years ago.
Amazing.
So I think that evolution has been harder on the right because the right has been totally replaced by this other thing.
It has been a trip.
Yeah.
All right. Let me ask you this. So this is sort of a segue because it's inside baseball. I'm so impressed by the work you do, like the amount of content and good content.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about a lot of it, but we haven't really gotten into. You've written much more extensively about the Washington Post collapse.
Mm-hmm.
You've talked about the Democratic Party's problems, despite the fact that Donald Trump has been stumbling with the Epstein scandal. The Dems are still floundering. You've talked about recently about Pete Hegseth, still probably the next on the chopping block. I mean, it's a lot of content and it's good stuff. I'd love to know just a little bit about your process, like how you get up in the morning. Is it like, I'm going to write 3 things today, I'm going to read? How do you do it?
So my wife and several friends who I've worked with over time at the Post and CNN and other places have been like, you're writing too much. So I've basically scaled back to, unless there was like huge breaking news that I feel like I have to say something about, 3 things tops in Substack a day, because I'm overwhelming people. I got a lot more ideas than that, and then I make 2 videos a day on YouTube. One longer one that is just I take the video I make every morning for Substack and put it on YouTube. I think it's a muscle, right? I mean, I think it's like anything else. I've been doing this for, let's see, I'm 49, 20, probably started doing it in earnest at about 25, 25-ish years. I've been getting up every morning, reading through as much news as I can consume, and then being like, what's interesting here? What's not being told? What's kind of the next logical question to ask? And then just trying to center content on that without being too, I mean, the thing that I think is really detrimental to journalism nowadays, and I know you struggle with this too, I'm sure, the easiest path to success, and by success I mean followers, subscribers, money, financial security, is just to be predictably and nastily anti or pro Trump. That's it. It's, he craps his pants, he has dementia, or Democrats can't shoot straight and they're all idiots and they covered Joe Biden. And so I don't really want to do that. I'm not interested in doing that, though. That is, if you want to get rich quick, that's your best path. But it's trying to figure out, okay, where's the energy in politics? And then in each day, and then can I say something that either expands on it or makes you think about it differently? And I'd like to think that's certainly my goal and approach every day. Do I land it every day? Probably not. But
how do you
I would urge. Yeah, go ahead.
Time though. So like I could just tell you, like I work from home. My wife works from home now. My kids are off school. I'm taking them to camps. My
Oh
wife and
yeah,
I are going
same.
out, and it's in a way it's great. But it's also, I mean, what you do is time consuming,
Yes.
and it takes time to learn the issues, to do these
Yeah.
videos,
Yep.
to prep for doing the videos,
Yes.
to produce them if you're doing it in house. It's
Hmm.
incredibly time consuming. So do you basically say like, okay, it's just like I'm going to work. I'm showing up at 9 a.m., leaving at 5. Do not interrupt me
No.
between those hours.
No. Um, a couple things. One, I do not do that. Like my son is in a golf camp that's just from 11 to 1. So at 10:40, I got off a call, I drove him to golf camp, I got a Starbucks, I came back here. My elder son is taking his driving test today. So I will drive him over to
Yes.
where he's taking it and at 4:30 or whatever. So no, it's not that. The other thing that I've learned though, Matt, is, and this is especially true when it comes to video, whether it's on YouTube or Substack. One thing I've learned is like, I definitely prepare. Like today, I posted, I think it's live now on my YouTube page. I posted a big thing about the biggest issue not enough people are talking about in politics is this redistricting that Texas is doing,
Mhm.
that California is talking about doing, Illinois might do, New Jersey might do, and just why it impacts you. Like, yes, I get most people when they hear redistricting roll their eyes and change the channel or whatever, but here's why it matters. So I did a bunch of research on that. But one thing I've learned is like I have a MacBook that right over here. I just put QuickTime on, and once I've prepared, I just talk. I press record, I talk into it, I
Mhm.
upload it to YouTube. I actually think like I don't try to make it look like TV. I try to make sure it's pretty well lit, that the
Mhm.
sound is pretty good, but and that the thoughts are at least, you could agree or disagree, but the thoughts are at least cogent, right? You're making an argument. But I don't spend a huge amount of time like trying to pretty it up,
Yeah.
because I found that people really like, if they like the information, they like the information. If they
Yeah.
don't, it doesn't matter that like I'm sitting behind a cool desk or like, oh, the lower third really flashed in there. The only people who care about that are people like us, and I'm not even sure I really care about it.
Yeah.
So
In fact, I think
that
you told me
saves
before
time,
that you got less reaction,
way
or
less,
by the more you put into the aesthetics of the
way
screen, the way it
less.
looks.
And
Yeah.
by the way, that's one of the reasons that here's how you know cable television is out of ideas. When Fox is an exception, because Fox will wither eventually, but it'll be by far the last one too.
Mhm.
But broadcast news and cable news, other than Fox, it's like I laughed. I forget what network it was, but they were like the ratings were down, which is the story of every network other than Fox. And they were like, "Here's what we're gonna do: new set." And I was like, no one gives a shit about a new set, man. Like the average viewer doesn't even know. New graphics package. That is not
Yeah.
going to fix the problem, right? If the dog does not like the dog food, no matter
Yep.
how good the sales and marketing team is, it doesn't matter. And so I think it's like, it's authenticity, it's being who you are. And then the other thing too, I think and I know you know this, is it's just drumbeat, it's cadence. It's like, every day, if you say you're going to do it 3 days a week, make sure you're there 3 days a week, the same 3 days a week for months. Nothing may take off for literally months, but it's building cadence. It's, oh, Cillizza sent me something on my inbox, don't have time to read it, I'm not interested in that one, but oh,
Mhm.
here's another Cillizza thing. It's all habit. You're just building habit, right? It's literally like being like, I'm going to do 50 push-ups a day.
Yeah.
I'm going to find a time to do 50 push-ups a day. Some days it's going to be a pain in the ass, some days it will be easy, but over time, if I keep doing that, I'm going to be stronger in a year than I was today. That's how I view content. Just keep making content of what you hope is at a minimum good quality, ideally great quality, but that's in the eye of the beholder at some level, and just keep doing it. It's weirdly the hardest thing to do, because life intervenes, right?
First
You
they
got
first they
I got to
ignore
do this, I
you.
got to do that. Like, it's
First they
hard.
ignore you, then they delete you,
Yep,
then they put
it's
you in their
true.
spam folder, then they delete you, and then they finally watch you.
Like
And
I think of it as beach erosion, man. It's like, you go down to the Outer Banks and you like look at that house and you're like, man, It's not great. That's the beach is eroding. It's going to be in the ocean. Then you go down like 5 years later and you're like, where's that house? And like, oh, it fell into the ocean. At some point, you just got to get past that tipping point where people are like, you know what? Like there's enough good coming out of this guy. I feel like I'm getting my money's worth. I'm willing to pay for it.
Yeah. Well,
And
let me
that's
just
hard.
say, if you're not reading Chris Cillizza or watching him, like I watch you so I can do my job. Is that wrong
Thank
with
you,
me?
my friend.
You're
Not
part
at
of my
all.
job.
I feel like we talked about JVL and kind of how I consult. I consult Chuck Todd on stuff, like I try to have like a little, one of the things I miss about a newsroom, like working for a bigger news outlet, is being able to be like, hey, I'm thinking, like, what do you think of this? Like, what am I not thinking of? Or like, is there, like, so many of the ideas I used to come up with when I worked for these mainstream outlets was just like shooting the shit with somebody and being like, oh, I like Paul Kane be like, hey, you know what's interesting? Like, look at this in Congress. And I'm like, I never even thought of that. So I try to have like a little kitchen cabinet of people that I'll kind of like bounce them like, hey, I'm thinking of writing this. Does that make sense to you? Does it seem weird? Am I missing? Like, there's something obvious I'm missing. I think that that's healthy for all of us, because I think one of the hardest things in this world now that we're all in is everyone's kind of in their own silo. Literally, like, this is my home office. This is where I come every single day. Do I go to other offices? Sometimes if I have to give a speech or, you know, I'm filming something for Monumental Sports, but most of the time, and I think that can get you, it is, you really have to consume other smart people, whether face to face or they're writing or them on YouTube or their videos or whatever, because I think that helps me think interestingly. I think that helps make us all better. I really do think there's like a rising tide lifts all boats vibe in that space. And we have to do a better job, I think, at encouraging people to understand that. You know, definitely. I don't think we do a great job at that. It's like, well, I read this one person who I agree with all the time, so that's all I need. It's like, no, I'm not sure that's the right path to get us beyond this current political moment.
Amen, my friend. Well, thank you. And make sure part of your healthy, diverse diet includes Chris Cillizza.
Thank you.
On Substack, on YouTube, on Twitter, wherever you
man.
Can get it.
I'll take it wherever I can get it.
Chris Cillizza, thanks for coming back on the pod.
Dude. Thanks, man. Always, anytime. Happy to do it.